Hi, I'm Allison, and this is Citizen Watch, where your voice matters. And I am running for United States Senate in 2022. And today we have Elizabeth Brooks, an EMT in training right now. Elizabeth, how are you doing today?
Good. How about you?
Awesome. So there's a few reasons why I wanted you on here tonight, and I appreciate you being on my show. Wow, there's a lot going on with the COVID-19 pandemic, and Pritzker pulling his stuff, the presidential election, fraudulent votes flinging left and right, a whole bunch of stuff going on. So what I'd like to focus on tonight, and the reason I brought you on this show, was because you're a paramedic in training, or an EMT in training, pardon me. And I wondered, I wanted to get a perspective from an EMT in training, or not, either one, because you're going through the same things EMT professionals would go through, and see what your take is on everything. So first of all, let me give you the floor for a second, and let me let you tell yourself, me about yourself, and why you chose the career field that you chose to go into.
Well, as Allison said, I'm Elizabeth Brooks. I am going to college to become an EMT paramedic. Reason why I want to get into this was I grew up with first responders with information I would not like to give. Let's just say we help a lot of people in disasters. So I grew up with first responders, and I wanted to specifically get into the medical field because of my grandma. And so this was a way for me to also become a firefighter too. And it was my way of getting onto a station where they can hopefully pay for my fire school and to become a firefighter paramedic.
Nice. Well, that's quite the ambition. And although I know you personally, along with your family, so so let's talk about being an EMT in today's day and age and what that means. Can you tell me a little bit about your training?
Well, with the training, you have to take an EMS course. As for example, I'm going through Blackhawk College, and you have to take, in Illinois, you have to take the National Registry Test, which consists of two parts, which is a psychomotor and a written. And with it, in today's day and age, well, along with the pandemic and stuff, it's different than what it used to be. As with it, you could look at your patients and talk to them, know their body language, or what emotions they were portraying. But now with the pandemic going on, with the masks and stuff, you're basically going off of body language and eyes, which a lot of people aren't good at recognizing what body language they are portraying. So with it, there's a lot of downsides.
And with those downsides, how difficult does that make your job to do?
Very. As with it, we want to make our patients as comfortable as possible, reassure them, get them the best treatment they can get before the pre-hospital, which is our job as a EMT paramedic, is to treat them enough to get them to the hospital where they can finish their treatment and get the proper things they need. And with the masks and stuff and everything going on, it's a little hard to give them that reassurance and comfort when you would talk to them. They would look at your eyes and mouth. Now with it, they're only looking at your eyes. So with it, they don't know if you're actually talking to them or not.
Right. Well, and that does prove to be difficult. Pardon me, guys, we're having a sound issue. I don't know what the problem is. So with that being difficult, I know that you have views and a little bit of a disposition about Pritzker and his shutdowns, his what I call his family shutdowns. And you know, I've talked to you previously about mentality and your emotions and what goes on with that. How does that, I guess, apply to what you're doing now?
Well, funny thing is, I'm doing a paper in my English class for mental health with the pandemic and quarantine. So with it, it kind of, I don't know how to say, it affects everyone. I mean, like, mental health is in everyone. So
But
it's kind of different for every person. Sorry.
Right. No, you're fine. So how does it, with your mentality and your everyday training and classes and anything hands-on, you know, obviously it makes it more difficult versus, you know, the way it used to be when I call the good old days. But when it comes to mentality, what do paramedics or EMTs, do they have to go through special training with mentality, or do they have to, what is the protocol for that?
Well, for the protocols with the mentality with EMTs, we really don't go through a training. You kind of learn that in class. As there's one chapter that I did that dealt with the stress of work, especially with certain calls. You can talk to your fellow EMTs, you can paramedics, you can develop good habits and stuff, because a lot of the stuff that we see really affects our mental health, as we are actually prone to developing post-traumatic stress disorder and can lead to depression and, yes, suicide.
Wow. And those are big topics. Those are, you know, we see that in police officers as well, and firefighters as well as EMT and paramedics. So that is a big topic. And that's room for concern when it comes to our men and women in uniform, and whether or not they can handle that mentality. Who do they have to talk to? Who is their outreach? Who do they go to? What, like you said, better habits, better, you know, just changing your everyday a little bit just so that you can, you know, get by or skate by that day. So what would you think, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about this election and what that means for you as an EMT professional. So let's just dive right into this. Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. I know the election, people are calling the election, people aren't calling the election. There's votes flying everywhere, but let's look at this from both angles. Okay, let's say Joe Biden takes this and is put in the presidency and he is sworn in. With his views that you're aware of, how would that affect your job, your thinking, and how would it affect the people that you're helping?
Well, from what views I have of Biden, I've seen sources online, I don't know if they're true or not, that he's gonna be forced, that he may lock us down again, he may force us to wear masks as soon as we step out of our home, which with some people we physically can't, because our bodies and our health aren't letting it. We may have conditions. And another thing that's big with the first responder world is how close the paramedic and firefighters are to law enforcement, because they're basically there to make sure our scene is safe. Say like, oh, we had a shooting, we arrive on scene, their job is to make sure the shooter is apprehended. before we even respond to it, to make sure our safety is number one. And then with their side wanting to defund police, it really scares me because there's now a lot of ambulance services that are making their EMT paramedics wear bulletproof vests. And with all the other equipment we already have to carry already, that's just going to be getting in the way of treating our patients. And our patients is second on our list, along with first one being our personal safety. Because if we aren't able to treat the patient because of safety, then the patient's in danger as well.
Wow, that's a really thorough answer. I like that answer. I think that you're right. I think it's going to be a problem. And if we go on a national lockdown, as per Biden and Kamala Harris, or Kamala Harris, that's going to impose a problem, and that's going to impose some concern, obviously safety issues and other issues to where it prohibits you from doing your job, basically. So with that being said, I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to go to what I call the fun part of the interview. So my final question for you, Elizabeth, is: do you regret your decision to become an EMT despite who is president? And I guess it's a two-part question. And the second part would be, what would you change differently if the call was yours?
I'm not regretting choosing my line of field with the presidents, because I'm more worried about if I've saved someone's life. As you say, like, you roll up on a scene and a guy has no pulse, no heartbeat. You immediately start CPR and you bring him back to life. You actually bring someone back from the dead. And those little things, and being there on people's worst days, knowing that you can give them a little reassurance and help them get into the right motion, is really what keeps me going in this field. And I like staying on my toes. It keeps me busy.
Awesome.
Can you repeat the second part?
Just what you would do different, as far as the mask mandate, or because there's two sides to this. There is a mask mandate, sort of, if you want to call it that. But at the same time, you do have those that have had COVID and have been sick and had concerns. And then there's the elderly and the people with pre-existing conditions, so as far as your line of work goes, what would you change differently if you could, when it comes to that?
Don't try to enforce it, the mask mandate. Make it a recommendation. As I said earlier, some people have conditions where if they're forced to put on a mask, they may not be able to breathe as much as they used to. And that can take a toll on your body. And I've had a personal experience of that, where I wore one while grocery shopping for an hour and about passed out. So
Right.
With it, I would love to make it a recommendation and let them choose if they want to wear it or not. Even if they've had COVID and all this other stuff, our immune system can do so much, but with the masks, it's kind of prohibiting our immune system of knowing what this is. And not wearing or making a recommendation, it can help us curve it a little bit, enough to get at a hold still, where there's no progression of it, and saying, hey, here's what we can do. What do we need to do for this?
Right. And I think several people have that opinion of it, at least several people that I know. Okay, so we're going to flip the tables a little bit. And I love this part of Citizen Watch. It puts me on the spot. I am no longer the host for these last 15 minutes. So today we are going to let Elizabeth be the host, and she is allowed to ask me any questions she would like about my candidacy. So it's up to you, Elizabeth. Go for it.
First question I have is, how would you change the voting laws to ensure a fair election for both sides? As we saw with fraud and all these glitches, what would you change to make the elections fair?
Good question. I had thought about fingerprinting, but then again, if you get a cut, if you burn your hand, then your fingerprint is no longer the same, so it would change. So that wouldn't work. But I definitely think IDs need to be enforced. I know in some states they're not. I've heard several constituents or citizens tell me, I didn't even get asked for my ID. I just gave them my name and oops, I'm in the system, and they just assume that. Well, that could have been anybody. So definitely IDs need to be enforced. I think that there needs to be more control over who can watch the counting of the votes. I think it actually needs every state should have their own team of Republicans and Democrats that get to watch the counting of the votes and make sure they're fair, because that's a big problem. We come up with an increased problem lately to where the Republicans were not allowed in the building, or if they were allowed in the building, they were so far back that they couldn't see the votes. So that's a problem. As far as anything else, I don't agree with mail-in voting. That's just my opinion. I think there's too much room for fraud. I know it's been around for a while, but they really pressed it this year because of COVID-19. And I'm not really sure that that's effective. I think it caused chaos. I think it caused late counting. I think it caused a lot of problems. There needs, when it's election day, votes need to stop. There doesn't need to be any later ballots. There doesn't need, when this is election day, this is when we count, then all the votes need to be in. And if they're not, they don't get counted. And it's hard because some are postmarked different, but then that's the mail-in voting ballot problem is, and there should be a stricter code with the post office. I think getting rid of ballots, I don't know if it's a felony, I have to check, but if it's not, it needs to be. Tampering with mail is a federal crime and you should go to prison for it. So it doesn't, if I tamper with mail, I go to prison. So why not anybody else? Next question.
Well, first of all, I like what you said about that one. There has been places online saying they have found trash, they have found like mailboxes on fire where some ballots have been placed for the mail-ins. And so I agree with it, which brings to a next one dealing with the election. When you go to Washington, what will you do to help with the media, and how do you think laws should be passed holding them responsible for fake information, as Facebook and Twitter are big ones about this?
So when I go to Washington, what was the first question? I'm sorry.
When you go to Washington, what will you do to help with the media, and do you think...
Okay, so sorry, I got it now. Okay, so what would I do to help with the media? Well, first off, the media needs to cover every party equally. I really believe I have a big problem with not just the media, but the number of people you have to sign to get on your signature page. I don't think it's fair that Democrats have the least amount of signatures and libertarians have 2 and 3 times as many. As far as the media goes, like I said, they need to cover everybody fairly. And if they can't do that, they're not doing their job. I know they focus a lot on one party or the other, depending on which way they lean. But I think that that's part of the problem, and why a lot of candidates don't get the time that they need to express what they intend to do. So you really, when you take away someone's freedom of press, basically, and not giving them enough TV time to do their spiel about elections, that takes away the fairness. And because I'm, on some instances, I'm pro-choice, like you have the choice to choose, what you want to run for and what you want to say. Well, if the media is not there for you and doesn't cover you adequately, then your message doesn't get heard. And that's why when you go to the ballot, you see Democrat and Republican president, and you see other options, but they're like at 1 and 2%. And it's because of the media coverage. It's because they don't get what everybody else gets. So to answer your question, what I would change about that is I wouldn't, if I had the power, and I'm not really sure that I can change the media in the Senate. I think the media is just the media, and they're going to spin it whatever way they can get a story. There's honestly no truth in journalism anymore, and there needs to be. So with that being said, I don't think I can do anything about it per se, but I can stress helping people getting heard, if that makes sense. And your second question was?
Do you think laws should be passed to hold them responsible for sharing fake information?
Absolutely. I think it should be a felony. I think I really believe that if you're willing to lie to get your point across, or to worry people when you don't need to, I mean, we're already in a pandemic. We don't need any more worrying. We've got enough on our plates. And I truly believe that, that it just doesn't do anybody any good.
I like how you answer that. As with some media, they don't get the full story. And
right.
As you said, they're cited either way, but there seems to be more one-sided than the other. And the one with the more people, the ones that's more lean to the one side, is literally taking the other side and pushing them to the back of the line, making them not even heard, not even seen. Right. So I like really how you answered that, as it can, I'm hoping it could also bring the ones who are pushed to the back of the line up front and giving us more of a different perspective.
Well, and I'll give you a good example about that. My friend Chad Grimm, he ran as the Libertarian Party in the 92nd District in Peoria, Illinois, and he literally had to go to court to get on the ballot, to put the Libertarian Party on the ballot. And I don't think that's fair either. And the media, they covered the story, but they didn't cover it. They were wishy-washy with it. So that's that. Next question.
What do you think of with the number of cases of COVID going up? Do you think that the masks are helping to curb the spread?
Originally, I didn't. I kind of wonder, I mean, if you think about it, and I know I'm probably going to get reamed for this answer, but it is the way I feel. As at the beginning of this, I refused to wear one. Absolutely would not do it. Anywhere I had to go, I wouldn't wear one. But when I started talking to the employees, and I started talking to managers and people around me, and it really, our government has done a good job about putting a scare into people. And once the scare and the fear is there, then you have the older generation, or pre-existing, conditions, people, or, just those spectrum of people that really honestly worry about it. So do I think it helps the spread? Possibly yes and no. Obviously, if you're wearing a mask, if you speak, anything that comes out of your mouth doesn't come out all the way because there's a mask there. But at the same time, you're breathing in your own CO2. So it's a little bit of both. I think to some extent, maybe it is. But do I think that is the entire problem? No. I think the numbers are fudged. I think they're exaggerated. I think Pritzker is doing a horrible job of how he handled this. He could have handled it so much better. For an example, he could have said, okay, you can wear a mask, but, we're not going to close down all the businesses. I don't think there was any reason to shut down the country. I don't think there was any reason to shut down all the businesses. That he could have said, ask people to wear a mask, continue as per usual, maintain a 6 foot distancing if you could, and be done with it. And that would have been fine. So we've got time for one more question.
Before I move on to the final question, I want to go back to the way you answered that with my own point of view. As with Pritzker, I agree. We really did need to shut down the country, and the way Pritzker handled it was really bad. Trust me. Worst senior year of my life. As I was basically, the rest of my senior year was ripped away. Because I was thinking at the beginning of 2020, my senior year is going to be great. I have a bunch of great concerts coming up. I get to walk across the stage. I get to have my orchestra banquet. Then all of a sudden I wake up and it's gone. Everything. With, you can't just go into a store anymore. You have to wear a mask. You have to do the social distancing. It's also the same with schools. A lot of the classrooms don't have the room to do the 6 foot distancing.
Right.
And especially with Moline High School, if all of our students went on, say like on a Wednesday and still had to do the 6 foot distancing, they would be having to teach in the football field, the baseball field. There's not enough room. So they literally had to split. And that's affecting a lot of kids, as my friend Brooklyn, her mental health is gone way down. And she's literally only in school Wednesday and Thursday. When before the quarantine and pandemic, she was happy. Her mental health was good. And just to seeing a change in everybody, actually, Pritzker should have handled it better.
Right.
And should not be lying, for one. As it's okay to put a little fear into others, but they put a little too much, to where with it they are starting to get obnoxious with it.
Right. Well, him violating court orders doesn't help any either. So we've got about 2 more minutes, Elizabeth. So if you want to ask any more questions, feel free. You've got about 1 more question you can ask, and then we'll end this broadcast.
Well, it's dealing with the vaccine. I know you probably don't have a lot of facts, but I'm wanting your opinion on this. Okay. What do you think of the Pfizer vaccine that they say is 90% effective? Do you think it's true? And from what sources you may have heard about a vaccine, especially in Illinois, I've heard that they may want to put a microchip in and force us to have it. Do you think that it's effective? Should there be a microchip, and should we be forced to have it, or have our own opinion?
I definitely don't think it should be forced on anybody. That's for sure. I don't know much about it. I just started reading about it recently. So my opinion is I would want to know where it came from exactly. I know Pfizer came out with it and said, okay, we've got a vaccine, it's effective. And that's fine if it's like any other vaccine. If it's, and that's okay. But I also don't think it should be forced. I think it should be an option. And I don't think anything, because that takes away your choice. That takes away your freedoms. And it shouldn't be, we're not back in the day where we all line up and we have to get a vaccine to go about our day. It's America's better than that. And with choice comes liberties, and with liberties comes freedom. So, it's all in the same realm. So do I agree with the vaccine? If it's safe, fine, so be it. But it's got to be proven to be safe. And I got to know it's not going into Pritzker's pocket. That's for sure. That would be my second one. So we are running out of time. I hope I answered your question.
You did very well.
So again, this is Elizabeth Brooks, paramedic / EMT in training. She has a heart of gold for her community. She just wants to help people, just like several of us do. I appreciate you coming on Citizen Watch, Elizabeth. And
Thank you for having me.
You guys stay tuned next week, Monday night at 7:30. I will be announcing our new guest for next week in a few days. Stay tuned and have a blessed night.